Before I welcome Mr. Kedir Awal Omar for his opening remarks, let me share a few words about him. Mr. Kedir Awal Omar is currently the head of the regional delegation of the International Committee of the Red Cross in New Delhi that covers India, Nepal, Bhutan, and the Maldives. In his current role, Mr. Omar brings decades of operational regional experience in humanitarian response. He has had a long career with the ICRC, having worked in various delegations globally, ranging from those in conflict settings to those involved in humanitarian diplomacy. From contexts such as Yemen, Sierra Leone, Gaza, Nigeria, Iran, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, and Kuwait. With this, I welcome Kedir on the stage for his opening remarks.
Dear Shri Rajendra Ratuni, IAS, Executive Director, National Institute of Disaster Management, our special guest this evening, member of jury and panelist, N.K. Singh, Deputy Secretary General of IRCS National Headquarters, General Goswami, Danish C. Sharma, Senior Journalist and Author, Surrender Ovario, Senior Journalist and our still present colleague, Gayatri Ramanthan, Journalist and Communication Professional, Urvashi Sarkar, Journalist and Author, Divya Pushkarna, Disinformation Advisor, Medicine Sans Frontier, MSF, Mari Servan, Senior Communication Advisor, ICRC, joining us from Geneva online. Our partner, Shashi Nair, Director, Press Institute of India, Chennai, member of Media Fraternity, journalists who have participated in this year's competition, distinguished ladies and gentlemen present here, those who are now connected with us virtually. Good evening. On behalf of the Regional Delegation of International Committee of the Red Cross, the ICRC, I am pleased to welcome you all to this year's annual award for Best Article and Photograph on Humanitarian Subject. As you all know, the theme of this year is the stories of resilience in humanitarian disaster, response, and challenge. This annual media award has a legacy of almost 18 years, where the ICRC and the Press Institute of India have recognized and honored India media professionals who have painstakingly documented stories of humanitarian concern. The ongoing partnership between ICRC and PII marks a milestone in our efforts to support journalists across the country for their invaluable contribution to humanity and keep them motivated for the good work. As the world changes at a pace and magnitude we cannot grasp, the scale and nature of humanitarian challenge we face today are also challenging. Natural events and man-made emergencies around the world, including climate change, armed conflict, pandemics, and other disasters endanger hundreds of millions of people, especially the most vulnerable. As most of you know, the ICRC and the larger Red Cross and Red Crescent movement and national society works closely with the communities for whom the convergence of this risk is not an abstraction but a reality. Frontline humanitarian action often plays a vital role in stabilizing fragmented environments and rebuilding affected communities. A resilience strengthening approach is also an essential part of ICRC's work with communities facing long-term challenge. As you know very well, humanitarian disasters exacerbated by climate change and global warming threaten millions of people's lives and livelihoods. This crisis affects everyone. Those hit hardest are the poorest and the most marginalized communities. The COP28 Climate Summit, scheduled for next week in Dubai, will underline that human lives are at the center of these disasters and humanitarian affairs comprise an essential part of the response. The media is also essential in helping communities that are worst hit with natural and man-made disasters. Thus, journalists, like most of you in the room, serving as public overseers, join force with environmental scientists and activists to raise awareness and advocate the solution. We wholeheartedly appreciate that journalists and photographers have gone the extra mile to cover underreported stories and often put themselves at risk to reach out to the communities that needs to be heard. Often, as humanitarian workers and journalists, the point is to be really on the spot. If possible, wherever you have feeling your action may be needed. We thank every journalist present at Ground Zero for the unwavering commitment to putting the spotlight on humanity's challenge. These awards are a small token of appreciation for the dedication to keeping people and needs at the center of their work. Members of the movements of the Red Cross and Red Crescent have tremendous effort in addressing climate change. It's evident to you all how IRCS volunteers are responding to disasters when it happens regularly. I think my colleague NK will tell us more about that. It's also important to mention the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Society, IFRC. It has launched a global climate resilience program. It's ambitious multi-year program to scale up locally led climate-smart disaster risk reduction and adaptation efforts. The regional delegation of ICRC in New Delhi has also supporting the National Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies in India, Bhutan, the Maldives, and Nepal with capacity building initiatives, including the effects of climate change and mitigating the impact of disaster. The support process continues, and we all need to help those affected, especially the most vulnerable communities. I congratulate all the winners of this competition and thank the participants. I would like to thank our long-standing partner, the Press Institute of India, for their unwavering support. This partnership will progress as it has for the past 18 years, and we look forward to continuing to recognize the media exceptional work. I also thank the PI and the ICRC colleague for their hard work and effort in successfully organizing this beautiful event this evening. Finally, my sincere gratitude to Sherry Ranjra Ratundon, IAS Executive Director, National Institute of Disaster Management, for taking out his precious time to be with us this evening. We have also had an enriching partnership with NIDM through our help course. Special thanks also to Shri N.K. Singh, Deputy Secretary General of IRCS, our natural partner in the movement, for being with us here today. I would also like to thank the esteemed jury and panelists who have generously been part of this year's award. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all once again for your presence here today.
Thank you, Kadir. Now, before we invite our special guest for this evening, Shri Rajendra Ratnuji on stage, let me share a few words about him with you all. Shri Rajendra Ratnu is an IAS officer of the 2001 batch of the Tamil Nadu cadre. He's present serving as Executive Director at the National Institute of Disaster Management, Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India. Before joining NIDM, he was working as Joint Secretary, Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India, where he was looking after international coordination with European countries, including India's participation in the World Economic Forum at Davos, National Industrial Corridor Program, and India International Convention Center. He was the chief architect for the new industrial development schemes for Jammu and Kashmir as well. Shri Rajendra Ratnu was awarded with the Prime Minister's National Award for the effective implementation of the NREGS works. Now I welcome Shri Rajendra Ratnuji for a special address.
Thank you very much to Press Institute of India and International Committee of the Red Cross New Delhi for inviting me to this very, very important event. And Mr. Kadir Awol Omar, Head of Regional Delegation for India, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri N.K. Singh, Deputy Secretary, Indian Red Cross Society, all the panelists who will be joining the session after this, Sri Sashi Nair, moderator for the session. We have General Saab here and many others whom I'm not naming personally, and all the recipients of today's awards. Often I'm a very extempore speaker and very confident speaker, but this event I'm also a little nervous because I'm speaking in front of best of the society, those people who are best of the not only intellectually but also by their credibility and many filters which this esteemed organization is used to select the best of the journalists in our country. It's also important, I was thinking that, we all bureaucrats, or anybody, all of us are mortal, we just die. But I think some of you who create ideas, who pen down the ideas, you are the one who create history and you live forever. You are immortal because you are made immortal by, having that courage and conviction to write that truth and other things. So, विचार कभी नहीं मरते हैं, हिंदी में हम लोग बोलते हैं, the ideas do not die. The creation does not die, and therefore a mortal being honoring such immortal souls is in fact not an honor for you, but it is an honor for me indeed. There are many hues and colors of bureaucrats also, and so is the journalism. There are many kinds of journalists, and often in the system, I always used to tell in the government that we pay the best of the salaries, in the government. You take the example of schools. By qualification, by knowledge, it's a government teacher who is much more qualified, he is much more capable. Still the result in the government school is not delivered many times. I'm not giving a generalized statement across the state, because many of the state has done very good experiments with education also. Is because the motivation is not there. When a person who is performing well and not performing well is given an equal kind of incentive system, or the salary structure or the rewards, it gets what they call in a management theory hygiene factor. No longer it becomes a motivator. These are the non-monetary, I'm not sure whether today's award has a monetary component or not. Even if there is no monetary, but the simple recognition, whether it's a bureaucrat from the last mile in working in the village to the highest level, or it's a journalist. Because there are various hues and colors, and if we do not make distinction between various kinds of journalists and we treat them in the same category, so I'm very happy that this partnership is not a sporadic one time, but you have continued this journey for 17 or 18 years. Is really, really commendable that you identified through various filters, and I believe that it would have been a very, very transparent and a good exercise to really reward the best, those who are doing their job. So I'm just, I think some friend Tom is here. He is, though doesn't understand Hindi, but I bombarded with him my poems last time. So I was just thinking that how I can, look at journalists. So a thought was coming to my mind that there are one category of journalists who work for Dhan. Dhan is money. So there is a category which is often spoil the name of the journalist. That is a paid news or other things. And these are the people, many times this people think that. There are people who write for fun also, just for sake of knowledge or this thing. Some people write for sensation, जिसको हम yellow journalism या we call it by various names. But there are people who are being recognized here who are rarely get recognized. Those जो कि मन के लिए काम करते हैं, जो वेतन के लिए नहीं वतन के लिए काम करते हैं, और जो परिवर्तन के लिए काम करते हैं. So I think those who work for the change, those who work for the dedication, for devotion, and for the nation and beyond, for the planetary, unlimited issues like climate change and disaster and humanitarian aspect, are the rare breed of journalists today. And recognizing their work today and honoring them is, I think, I must compliment the organizers for this continued, sustained effort to generalize, this thing. And I find that being an, institute which has come into existence as one of the world's first center after Yokohama Conference after 1994, India was one of the first countries to have a national level center for disaster management in 1995 itself, which was earlier our previous version, which was situated in Ministry of Agriculture. And this moved after the Bhuj earthquake, and then when it was, new dimensions were added to the disaster management, and so it has moved to Ministry of Home Affairs and renamed as National Institute of Disaster Management, and further given the power by the Disaster Management Act of 2005. And today we are an institute which is working for capacity building, for documentation, for research, for policy support, for various multi-hazard scenarios and multi-sectoral. We are cross-cutting various sectors, and in that context we are also very happy to see that there is a new thematic area which emerges to my mind, is that I was going through some of the articles which are, today, you already, they know, na? Okay, so then I will keep my, mouths tight. So I've gone through them, and the kind of insights that are coming out of whether that is social inclusion or, various dimensions of, so those kind of case, they are real. Some of them can be really used as a case study with the permission of the authors, of course, that the National Institute of Disaster Management can engage with further the, institutions. We have a India, India Universities and Institutions Network for Disaster Risk Reduction, and in that we are planning to create various knowledge verticals, and we are already decided that we'll also start working with the institute that teach journalism and mass media communication, so that in the curriculum itself we can sensitize the people, and there can be little module or these insights on the role of journalists during the disaster and humanitarian response. So thank you for this opportunity. So surely we will like to see that how we can work with you to curate a new module to have faculty development program, as well as engagement with the development as well as the humanitarian journalists. So we should not be only talking about the humanitarian crisis and disasters. I think we should also be focusing on the mitigation and resilience part, which comes much before the disaster, and where if we work in the normal times with these sectors and mainstream the disaster risk reduction strategies into various development sectors. Today we have done a huge leap jump progress in terms of understanding many of the risks on the scientific parameters, assessing those risks and mapping those risks. Where we are missing out is on two accounts. One is the risk communication, and the second is the risk perception. That many a time the where we have been able to communicate those risks, we have seen a huge kind of impact. In the recent Biparjoy cyclone, where we got from the IMD a warning, and 5 to 6 days advance that where the the cyclone will have a landfall, and it was almost 100% accurate forecast that the landfall point will be here and this will be the route of the cyclone. And it was an excellent example of how various agencies at various levels cutting across sectors work together, and we tried to achieve the zero casualty kind of which is a dream of the disaster managers, that we should have a hazard but it does not turn out into a disaster. So as far as human losses are concerned, there are more than 300, or exactly figure I'm forgetting, the deliveries. There was mapping of the pregnant women who may like to go to the hospitals, and a kind of arrangements were made to reach them to the medical facility during that period, and not even a single death of a neonatal or the expecting mother was there. Similarly, so I'm just trying to say that this was the role of the media, because this communication information, which is very jargonized into our communication, but is simplified ways you have communicated to the last mile in the vernacular languages, and that was a kind of dissemination of information which really makes a difference into the lives of the people in the minimizing the losses to property and other assets. So the kind of role that media can play into dissemination of the risk and information is a very, very crucial. And the second thing I said was the risk perception. Today many a time we want that people's social and behavioral change should take place in terms of how they respond to the risk. But unfortunately, there are very few journalists who engage into that kind of stories which can actually bring about a change into people. But I'm sure that this engagement of journalists and recognizing the efforts of the journalists who work on the DRR aspect, whether that is the hazard risk zones or in terms of the vulnerability of people and infrastructure, etc. I am sure that your stories will also make a huge impact on the way people respond to the communications and the risk which are communicated from time to time. I'm not going to list down the long list of history of the positive journalism in terms of the disasters. I'll just like to mention even the most recent one, that in the pandemic also, when entire supply chains were getting disrupted and where everything was come to standstill, something which was provided was information by many of you who had fed into various media, and at times actually newspapers were also not coming, but it was the digital media and other platforms that people were able to access this knowledge, and this made a huge difference to the way the situation was. People also reacted, and also to the government and various agencies that have been given the task of responding to that situation. Because I was also one of India's 27 those monitoring officers who were given the duty during that time, and when people were just thinking whether we go to out, but we were given a duty to go to the most infected places and to see that how hospitals are working and other things. So only two kind of creatures were there, either these kind of front warriors of hospital and other thing, or another breed was the journalists who were capturing these stories in the field, risking their lives, whether it is a war situation today, many time conflict situations, or it is pandemic or any other situation. You are the ones who are the real heroes who risk your own lives, and you go and at a ground level you cover those stories, which really brings and the world gets to know. So in addition to information dissemination and also on the minimizing the gap in the terms of risk perception gaps by your positive, I think engaging the community also on these kind of discourses also is very, very important, that media plays that kind of role. And it is also humanitarian crises are also times when there is a maximum corruption takes place at various levels, whether it's the NGO sector or the government, and the accountability and other things, which many times you are the watchdogs and other things, which brings about at the local level and many levels. So those kind of accountability and transparency also, many times you create that kind of enabling environment because of your power of your thing. And I still remember that I was Commissioner Disaster Management in Tamil Nadu in 2017-18. There was a very, very different cyclone, and one or two such situation which I handled. I'll just share two examples with you. One was in 2017, one cyclone which was Oki cyclone. This again has totally defeated all the kind of scientific knowledge, because sometimes we think that there will be 5 days window to give a forewarning. Within 2 days it developed into depression, deep depression and cyclone, and had a landfall, and there were hardly any time, and it was through media and our control room that we could reach out to the fishermen on the coast of coastal areas, and there could be huge loss of lives could be averted. The another example comes to my mind is the next year this Gaja cyclone, which had in the November 2018, which has a landfall in south of Nagapattinam, and people never expected a cyclone which enters from the Bay of Bengal, crosses entire peninsular region and enters into Arabian Sea. So this again was a kind of a scientific prediction which was very, very good, but very challenging situation we found was that entire night we kept on having a press meet and convincing people and through media that there is a real danger to Tanjavur, Pudukottai and even to Dindigul, which they were not laughing. So actually administration also we had to push, because the risk perception is not there. People are not, because many time our previous history I think would have happened that sometime earlier when such scientific tools were not there and we were not able to forecast. So the legitimacy of many of these forecasts had gone. So point I'm trying to say is the large number of lives were saved, but a few were lost because people did not take that warning very seriously. So again media was the one large strength which could save lives. And the last example I like to give another anecdote from my experience is of an environmental campaign which I was running in Kanyakumari district to eradicate plastics into 2009 and 10. And the date for this enforcement was on 1st April 2010 that and there was a 10 months social and behavior change campaign, and everything was planned and going on. So last day the plastic manufacturers from Tamil Nadu and Puducherry thought that no, there was orders, everything has got stopped, so there is something real crisis. They all drove down to Chennai and they thought that they will engage with the media and in the normal way, and they will create a story that, you know, this is against, there is so much of inconvenience. And you'll not believe, no media actually supported this kind of thing, because if you engage with media and interact and tell them about, so neither are public representative of this thing. The next day the story which came was totally, you know, in favor of the plastic campaign, and a smaller story comes of this entire big gang which came from entire Tamil Nadu to, you know, crush our campaign. So point I'm trying to say is that media can really be a strength. At times it can be, of course, a double-edged weapon for the administration, but most of the time when you engage with a clear motives and you communicate well, them this can become a big strength which can be leveraged by people in the governance structure also, who are, you know, working on the areas of climate change and other social and you know, DRR issues. And many of the challenges in this area also, I don't want to dive deep into that, but I'm sure that these all, you know, today the new risks are emerging, and the you know, awareness about them is very low. Whether this is a GLOF, we had 2 events in Uttarakhand earlier, and in this year beginning we had in Sikkim. So these again, the risk, these are because of the, again, climate change and how glacier you know, melting and retreating is happening, and these kind of things may become increasing risk. So I think many of these new risks as well as the existing risk, I'm sure that this platform which is supporting this kind of positive journalism, developmental journalism, a journalism which is there for, you know, not sensationalization but for sensitization and real social change, will surely get strengthened by your recognition of this, you know, on this very prestigious platform. So I'm again, without standing between you and the awardees and the next technical session, I once again congratulate all the winners. Those who could not make it, you know, success is not a destination, it's a journey. Keep up your journey, and I'm sure that your work will surely get recognized. And with that, again, I thank everyone and all the audience who have patiently heard me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shri Rajendra Ratnuji, for those inspiring words, which I'm sure motivates not only the journalists present in the room, but also the ones outside to continue their passionate chase for the stories that matter. With that, ladies and gentlemen, before I welcome our next guest this evening, Mr. N.K. Singh, a few words about him. Mr. N.K. Singh is the Deputy Secretary at the Indian Red Cross Society National Headquarters. He has been a former Indian Information Service officer and has a background in the media. He has been with the IRCS for more than 30 years and represents the organization at various national and international forums. Mr. Singh has coordinated various emergency response operations in the country and is known for his humanism and commitment towards the Red Cross movement. Welcome, Mr.
First of all, thanks for inviting me here, and I would like to congratulate, first of all, the ICRC and the Press Institute for their 17 years of relationship, and they have continued. In today's times, 17 years is a very long period, and relationships, they don't survive so long. So I hope it continues, and it is able to help us understand humanism through journalism. So first of all, I would like to welcome our NIDM Executive Director, Rajendra ji. I had heard about him before, but today is the first time I am able to see him. And he has a lot of experience, and he shared some of it, which is going to be beneficial for all of us, especially the journalists who are into such reporting opportunities very frequently. And thanks, Kedir, for inviting me. And Kedir has been, we keep competing with each other, who has served Red Cross for more years. So Kedir has been almost my contemporary in the Red Cross movement. So friends, I have very few things to share with you. First of all, I would like to tell you that why I joined Red Cross. If a thorn pricks us, we experience pain. If a thorn pricks us, we experience pain. But if a thorn pricks somebody and we experience pain, that feeling is Red Cross. So from the beginning I had this. If I saw somebody suffering, I would be pained. And that's the reason I left government and then joined Red Cross. I would also like to tell you here that the credibility of Red Cross is not something which we earned overnight. It is over 160 years of sacrifice of our volunteers, our staff members. And these sacrifices have helped us survive. In the International Conference of Red Cross in the year 2004 or 5, I had made one intervention. The intervention was especially on this. There were a number of people participating in this meeting who said that we have lost 5 volunteers, we have lost 2 officers, we have lost our best people, and so let us mourn. And then everybody stood up, there was a mourn, there were people give homage to those who had given their lives for Red Cross. After that, I just made a small intervention and I said that, look, let us not mourn these deaths of Red Crossers. We should celebrate this because it's on the basis of their sacrifices that the Red Cross has survived. If we had not lost our people, we would not have survived so long. Here, I would like to tell you the credibility of the Red Cross is because of the sacrifices that have been made, because of the work that we have done, and the credibility is so much that during the COVID, and I don't know if there is any family or individual who didn't suffer during COVID. During COVID, even the government of India decided that the sole consignee for all the international relief would be the Indian Red Cross Society. And when all offices were closed, roads were barren, nothing was happening around, it was only people like us in the Red Cross, and I would also say that the ICRC, our partners, and the IFRC, our partners, they also stood with us. And there were days, I think for more than 2 to 3 weeks, the ICRC staff members also worked with us in our office to manage the mammoth. We had, about 400 relief consignments which came through ships and aircrafts and so many other methods. By road also, from Bangladesh side also, some relief supplied had come. So it's the credibility that matters. Today, if there is any riot, any strife, anywhere in the country, the only organization which is allowed to work is the Red Cross. You talk of Manipur, you talk of any other past conflicts, if we may like to call it, or the skirmishes that we keep listening about. So Red Cross is acceptable within the Indian territory by the state. By state means the government, whether it's the central government or the state government. And we have stood the test of time. I would like today, first of all, congratulate those who are being awarded. At the same time, I will tell them that award is not the only recognition. The real award is when you are satisfied, when you feel that you have done a good job. If you think that you have done a good job, that is the real victory. And victorious people are not the ones who have got several awards and recognitions. They are the ones who have worked silently. And we know several people in this country also who are remembered not because of the Padma Shri or Padma Vibhushan or the other decorations that they got, but because they worked with the community, in the community, lived with them. And Red Cross gives that opportunity to its staff members, also to its volunteers, to be in the community, to work with them. And as Rajendraji was mentioning about his experiences, I also have one small And although I have been associated with most of the disasters, but this was something kind of an international situation in 2005-6. There was a ship that came from Ireland in which relief supplies were brought for Sri Lanka, for the people who were affected, and we know what was happening in 2005 and 6. So when the ship came, the Tamil Nadu government wanted that somehow the relief supplies should reach Sri Lanka. Somehow. And it was a very big task because the Sri Lankan government was not willing to cooperate. Indian government had its different stand, but Tamil Nadu government was hell-bent upon that somehow it should happen. So at that point of time, sometimes many things don't happen officially. Sometimes things happen unofficially also. So I somehow played a bit of a role of a facilitator, and the relief supplies, the ship was able to land and supplies were delivered. And one of his senior colleagues was pivotal in this because we knew each other from that times. So today I'm not going to be between you and your next technical session. I congratulate everybody and I thank everybody for being a witness to this event in which we are actually saluting the heroes of pen. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. N.K. Singh. Without further ado, I would request Kadir to felicitate our guests today with a small token of appreciation from us. Without further ado, the moment you've all been waiting for, of course, the panel discussion will follow after that. If I may request Shri Rajendra Ratnuji, Executive Director at the National Institute of Disaster Management again, to present the awards today for the winners in the Best Photograph category. The second prize this year in the Best Photograph category goes to Jinse Michael from Malayala Manorama for his picture, The Devastating Traces of Kerala Floods. Congratulations. Jinse, if you would want to share a couple of words with us, please.
Thank you, PII and ICRC, for selecting me for this prestigious award. This is a milestone in my career. I am coming from Kerala. Many disasters and climate change have struck Kerala in the last few years. I got this award for a picture of a family who were affected in one of such tragedies. Once again, thank you. Thank you so much.
And now the first prize this year in the photography category goes to S.L. Shant Kumar for his picture Coastal Erosion in Kerala in the Times of India. You can. Their photos are also displayed on the screen for all of you here.
Thank you, PI and ICRC, for this award, and I especially thank for all the jury members. This is more than award, as in like an awareness. I consider this award as an awareness because we've been fighting from almost a decade and a half. So I started this environmental coastal erosions in Chennai. So I've been working in Chennai for almost a decade. So I started the impact which has been having on the fishermen's community. So I've been witnessing on the coastal erosions, And I've been witnessing to the rich lands where drought been affected, and every year I can see the seas advancing to the land. And most of the people, like most of the fishermen have been affected. They have been, I can still see I've been documenting this from almost like 15 years. So this is my as a big long-term project on the coastal erosions. I can see it advancing every year. And you know, these people which have been photographed, this man, so his entire ancestors have been saved money and they built homes, you know, their entire livelihood with this fishing community. So one all day, like, you know, it vanished away, and they've been in the homes, and you know, like, and the place, they don't have the place to stay, and you know, government is also not been considering them, so they are still awaiting a response, and you know, from the government. So I really take this award as an awareness, so we can continue more to tell the stories of the people who are really been suffering on this. And thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, now for the best article category. May I first invite Mr. Sandeep Bali, the head of prevention at the ICRC's regional delegation, to hand out the special mention awards for this evening. The first special mention award this year in the best article category goes to Ismat Ara, reporter The Frontline. If you're here, Ismat. Okay. In that case, the second special mention award this year for the best article category goes to Sissy Jacob, senior sub-editor Mathrubhumi. Now I welcome Manish Das, Deputy Head of the Regional Delegation of the ICRC, to present the third prize in the Best Article category. The third prize this year in the Best Article category goes to Sonal Matharu, journalist, The Print, for her article, Cookie Survivors Recount Manipur Mob Horror. Please.
Thank you, PII and ICRC, for this acknowledgement. I'm really grateful for my family, friends, and my editors at The Print who gave me the opportunity to cover the crisis in Manipur. It was definitely not an easy assignment. My photographer and I landed there when the violence was at its peak. And we would every day in the hospital see a lot of injured being brought in, and many of them also died in front of our eyes. The story for which I won the award is about 3 such victims of this violence who somehow miraculously made it alive, because they were beaten to death almost and left on the streets of Imphal. But they lived to tell their tales. They trusted us, and they shared all the details with us, believing in us that we would report their stories fairly and accurately. So thank you again, ICRC and PII, for acknowledging this work. And I hope we see the end in the Manipur crisis soon. Thank you so much, everyone.
The second prize this year in the Best Article category now goes to Ritvika Mitra, independent journalist, for her article, Storm Cycle Effect on Child Trafficking. Ritvika, if you could join us, please. I request Mr. N.K. Singh.
Thank you for the award today and for this recognition. I think we are nothing without our sources, so this particular story is of Aisha and Sumaya, a mother-daughter duo who have gone through intergenerational trauma in the Sundarbans in West Bengal. And I was covering their story for almost a year, and they sat through all the interviews. Many of them were phone interviews, so I think this is for them and the many, many survivors of sexual violence in the Sundarbans. And I think we are at a time where as journalists, we need each other. And I would like to thank my friend Sana Shakil, who is here today with me, and a very rigorous reporter herself. So I think we should all learn from each other and collaborate with each other and be in solidarity. Thank you.
Now, the first prize this year in the Best Article category goes to Vaishnavi Rathore for her article in Scroll titled From Orissa to Kerala, a Bus of Climate Migrants. I request Kedir Avolomar to please hand out the prize. Thank you. Apart from the trophies and the certificate, there are also cash prizes for all of our winners here today. So a big round of applause, please, for all the winners and Vaishnavi.
Thank you so much for the jury to even be acknowledging these stories on climate disasters. And not just this particular article, but I've seen that a lot of photos and other articles that were appreciated today were on climate crisis. So thank you so much for the jury to do that. Of course, big thanks to my editors who saw so much value in the story when it was just a small germ of an idea. And they edited it with such love and care and made it a deeply a human story at its center. This particular story is about how a family is split across 2 states, from Odisha to Kerala, because they had to migrate and work in Kerala when the sea started eating into their villages, which is because of coastal erosion. So big thanks to them for doing this. And of course the families who opened up their hearts, their homes to tell these stories, to trust me with some very difficult times that they were going through. And lastly, I just want to say that these kind of stories, they take, of course, travel, ground reporting, spending time on ground, all of which requires resources. And I hope that all of you here consider supporting independent media that is there in our country right now. So thank you so much again for this.
Thank you again. I request you all to please join us in the audience. To all of the winners this year, many congratulations for all of these stories that you've written and the photographs that you've clicked. There will also be certificates at the end of this along with prize. Thank you, Shri Rajendra Ratnuji, again, once again, for honoring us. Thank you. With this now, we move to our third segment this evening. In a couple of minutes, we'll just change the orders around here a little bit. A panel discussion on this year's theme, Stories of Resilience in Humanitarian Disasters, Responses and Challenges. If I could please welcome our panelists and jury members to join us on the stage, please.
All right. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope the hall is still full, because usually we have the panel discussion first and then the awards. But now that the awards have been presented, I hope people are still there in the hall, because I'd like a packed hall for the discussion. So good to see the panelists on stage. I think there are only 2 of us who are away, myself and Mary. Mary, hello. Must be early time in Geneva. Here it's 7:30.
Hello. Hello, Sashi. Hello, everyone.
All right. So I actually liked Mr. Ratnu's speech. He made several points that were pertinent, I thought, but things like, ideas never die, creativity is forever. And I love that line, वेतन के लिए नहीं, वतन के लिए काम करते हैं, which means, Mary, that you don't work for a salary, but you work for the nation with dedication. So I really like that line. And he spoke about monetary compensation. I don't know whether we are going to mention the monetary compensation in the press release later in the day, but certainly, yes, the journalists who win are also receiving cash awards, as has been the tradition over the years. But yes, money is not the attraction here. Certainly not for journalists. I think it's recognition, not only for journalists, even for anyone in any field. I think if you're working with dedication, it's not money that matters, but the recognition you get for your work. He also mentioned media being a source of strength. And said, could be a double-edged sword or weapon. I think we must take the cue there and, try and sustain the high standards of journalism that all of you journalists, not just here in the hall there, but journalists everywhere who are doing good work, should understand, not bow down to pressure, to continue to do the good work despite the odds. Mr. N.K. Singh mentioned about award not being the only recognition. He's absolutely right. Victorious people, he said, work silently. I'm reminded of what Swami Vivekananda once said, that when you're working for people, there should be no public relations, no publicity, no name-making, humbug, etc. And you must work silently. It's a pity I couldn't be there today. It's a bit of a bad back, and I've been advised not to travel. Otherwise, I would have loved to be there and be in the midst of all of you. Some of the journalists I know, I was quite happy when I saw Shant Kumar winning, going on stage to win the award. We had worked together briefly in the Times of India years ago. So I must also thank Mr. Kedir Omar. He, of course, mentioned that we have a strong bond. We've built a strong bond over the years, the Press Institute of India, the ICRC. And like Mr. Singh said and Mr. N.K. Singh said, relationships don't survive so long. I really think not in today's world, but so this is one of those defining relationships, and we are looking forward to the silver jubilee in a few years' time. Thank you so much, Mr. Kedir Omar, for supporting us and for supporting this program. It's been a pleasure working with you and your team. This year has been, I know, especially difficult with a couple of us not being too well, etc. But we managed to put it all. And a big thank you to Rohan. Before I forget, he's done a great job doubling up for people who weren't getting. So, all right. So let's get through with the panel discussion. I'll not keep you waiting too long because I know there's dinner and there will be some good conversations with dinner. Warm welcome to the jury members. They must be wondering why I'm not there. I'll introduce them briefly. And Dinesh, Gayatri, Urvashi, and Mr. Oberoi. I'm so happy to see you all on stage. And Divya, I think, is also there. And of course, Mary is joining us from Geneva. Quickly, Dinesh, of course, has been on the jury. I think this is the third time he's been on the panel. So I think you are there with Usha Rai and a couple of, I think, Pamela Philippos. Dinesh is an award-winning journalist, author. He's a media trainer. He's had more than 35 years of experience in reporting on science and technology, health and environment. He was the science editor at Mail Today, which was part of the India Today group. And he was founding managing editor at India Science Wire. He's a regular contributor to the Lancet, which is a medical journal, as all of you might know. And he's authored a couple of books, one about the IT revolution, and a book which I really like and which I have a copy of is called Indian Innovation, Not Jugaad, published by Roli Books. You can ask him where to get a copy and get yourself a copy. It's worth reading. It's got old world charm. It talks about 100-odd innovations that have transformed India in the past 75 years. He's a Jawaharlal Nehru Fellow, and I understand he's working on the evolution of Hyderabad as a technology cluster. That should be interesting. Welcome, Dinesh. Good to see you on stage. Gayatri Ramanathan, a warm hello. I know you had to catch a flight and come, make it on time. There's an echo I can hear. Yeah. Gayatri spent more than 30 years with media houses such as the Times of India, the Business Standard, and Mint as writer and editor, covering key energy, economic, and finance portfolios. Passionate about clean energy, and climate change mitigation and adaptation. And she works with the media. She has been working with the media on such issues since 2018 with Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. Gayatri, welcome. Good to have you on board and good to have you as part of the jury this year. Urvashi Sarkar is an independent journalist. She covers international affairs and nuclear power. Wow. She also writes on development, health, and climate change in the Indian Sundarbans. How many of us have thought there's an Indian Sundarbans and there's a Bangladesh Sundarbans? She's significantly, she's a past PII-ICRC award winner. She won the award in 2017, and she reminded me recently that she won it for a story about the Sundarbans. She's also won the prestigious Ladli Media Award. She's one of those bright young journalists who's doing well. She's a fellow with the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, the People's Archive of Rural India, Sayanath's PARI, PARI, and the UN Rehem Al Farah Memorial Journalism Program. Urvashi, good to have you. You come from Bombay, I guess.
I'm actually coming from the Sundarbans. I was there on assignment, so I'm coming from Calcutta actually. Yeah,
Wow.
good to see you, Sashi. Sorry we could meet in person.
I know. That will happen sometime. Soon. Sooner than later. Surendra Oberoi, my good friend, and who's been almost like a colleague for the last, how many? 12 years since I've been with PII. He's presently a freelance writer who writes for News Drum and Greater Kashmir. So he sends me these messages with his stories on WhatsApp, and I quite enjoy reading them. Mr. Oberoi has served as bureau chief both at Star News, which is a Kashmir-based publication, and at AFP, which is one of the leading news agencies in the world, along with AP in Jammu and Kashmir. He's also worked for ARD, which is the first German television service, and India Today. Mr. Oberoi has covered the J&K situation for more than 15 years, including the Kargil War. And he was earlier, and he still is associated with the ICRC. He was earlier the political advisor and senior management and communication head. He had a 15-year innings, and he's a consultant now. And that's how I met him first. And also, I must mention that the PII-ICRC Awards program has developed and gained stature, etc., thanks to his organization and organizational skills, and thanks to his support. So thank you, Mr. Oberoi. I miss being there, but it's great to see you.
Yeah, thank you, Shashi.
You're looking as dapper as ever.
Yeah, thank you, Shashi. We are surely missing you here, but at least your presence is there. So,
yeah.
And whatever we have done is a collective work all together, along with my other colleagues. Thank you, and looking forward.
Yeah, thanks. Divya Pushkarna, is she there on stage? Yes, yeah, I think she is. Hi, Divya.
Hello, Shashi.
Yeah, Divya works as disinformation advisor with Médecins Sans Frontières, which translates to Doctors Without Borders. She works extensively on assessing and managing harmful digital incidents with a focus on misinformation or disinformation and its impact on MSF's humanitarian work in many countries. I think they work in almost 100 countries.
More than 80 countries, to say.
80 countries. I think most of you would have heard of Médecins Sans Frontières. She has more than 10 years of experiencing managing digital operations in humanitarian and media sectors as a digital communications professional. But what I like most is that, like me, when I served this newspaper once, Divya has also worked as a digital business journalist with the Hindu Business Line. I wasn't introduced. I think perhaps Rohan forgot to introduce me, but I had a short innings with the Hindu Business Line.
Oh, lovely.
And finally, the last but not the least, Mary Dejonka. Mary, have I spelled it right? Mary Dejonka. He's joining us from Geneva.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Sashi.
Yeah. Mary started her readings with ICRC as an associate in 2001. He's worked in the field as a protection delegate, local manager in Palestinian territories, in Sudan, in Rwanda, and in Sri Lanka. He joined the communications department in Geneva as chief editor and later as spokesperson for the Central and Eastern African region. Back in the field, she joined the Ukraine delegation as communication coordinator and later joined the Algeria delegation as deputy head. Before joining the strategic communications team in Geneva, she held the position of resource mobilization country manager in Nigeria. Where all have you worked, Mary? Mary, by the way, holds a specialized degree in human rights law. So that's the introduction part. So let's get going straight away. First questions to the jury members, Dinesh, Gayatri, and Urvashi. Some quick remarks about the entries this year. Which were the ones that stood out? And which were the stories that you all found most impactful? You can mention names if you want to, or if you don't want to, you needn't. Dinesh, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Sashi, for the kind introduction and rather long introduction. And it's good to be here once again. And normally in such discussions, panelists join from remotely. And this is the first time I'm attending a discussion where the moderator is remote, but it's good to know and that you're there. And first of all, congratulations to all the winners. So, and personally, I would like to greet all of them maybe after this discussion. And it was a combined work of the 3-member jury, and I'm sure the other members of jury will also add their words. And there were more than 60 entries, and believe us, 3 of us read all of them individually. We didn't divide between us, so we read all of them. And it was quite a enjoyable exercise, I must say, going through all these stories, a variety of stories coming from different parts of the country and covering a wide range of subjects. And of course, you know the winners, so I don't need to mention the ones which stood out, but there were many. In fact, the competition was tough. I mean, it's a cliche which jury members say, but it was really tough. Please, you must. And as I mentioned, the subjects range from, say, humanitarian crisis like floods, communal riots in Delhi, or floods in Delhi, to what's happening on the coastal side, Kerala and Tamil Nadu and other parts, and Orissa, and also some stories which take a long-term view. It's not just on the spot what is happening. For example, one story which has stood out and which has won the prize is about if people are getting affected in coastal areas, what's happening to them, the so-called climate migrants. So we need to go from one state to another and do the complete story. And there have been a number of follow-up stories also. So the number of subjects which have been covered has been wide-ranging. Relief and rehabilitation, there was a story on that. And another point.
Yeah, sorry.
Another point.
No, that's all right. Sorry.
That most of the stories, I'm not talking just of the winners, came from freelance writers, and that says a lot about the changing, landscape of media industry in this country, because I mean, one can have a separate discussion on that, but why? But the observation is that most of the entries came from freelance journalists. And many of them were supported by reporting grants and other fellowships because, as one of the winners said that, if you want to really do an in-depth on-field stories, you need support. So the support is coming from outside. So the freelancers are being supported. And the number of entries from languages other than English were very few. There were a few, especially from Kerala, and they were translated into English and given to us. But I didn't find, for example, any story from any Hindi newspaper. Maybe one or two were there, but that's not many. Given the size of the media industry in different languages, it was not reflected in the entries. So that's another thing. Maybe we need to do more kind of engagement with the regional media so that entries come from those newspapers and media.
Yeah, that's one of the things
also.
I thought when I
Yeah.
saw the promo, when they were playing the video. What struck me was that all the journalists there spoke in English. There were no journalists who were speaking in Hindi or Malayalam or Tamil or other languages which we could have transcribed on screen. That was a point that struck me. We'll work towards that.
Yeah, I think that needs to be there because maybe people are not aware, and because that's one way, as everybody has been saying, that awards and recognitions motivate people to do more such stories. So we need to handhold languages other than English. And Malayalam, of course, and Malayalam and Tamil, because maybe PII is based there, so the catchment area is there, but you need to get to others. And
but most of the phone calls I receive are from Delhi, so there's no catchment area here.
No. So, yeah, but we need to expand the reach of the awards. That's what I feel. Going by the
point well
entries
taken,
this year.
Yeah, point well taken, Dinesh. We
Right,
don't have too much time, so let's go around quickly. Gayatri, your inputs.
And also one more point, and then we can. There are different kinds of stories in terms of journalistic skills. There were database stories, there were anecdotal and stories which are also, there were stories based on research, there were stories which, did a long-term follow-up. So there were the number of stories which came from different regions and different subjects also covered various technical skills of journalists. So, reader may not be able to recognize that, but there were different, all the techniques of journalism were, used. And overall, I would say that humanitarian journalism needs support. Of course, as far as I know, ICRC and PII is the only award or recognition that recognizes humanitarian journalism. There are many for, say, climate change or even health journalism or a different subject, but humanitarian journalism, this is the only one. Unfortunately, the NIDM director has left, but otherwise I would have requested him that why not institutes like NIDM and other disaster management agencies also join or have parallel, kind of networks of journalists and do capacity building and maybe have awards and fellowships to encourage in different regions. So that's
right.
Takeaways.
No, in fact, I was, Dinesh, I was pleasantly surprised when Mr. Ratnu seemed so very supportive of journalists and journalism and good journalism, etc. In fact, if I had met him or if he was still there, I wanted to tell him is that we would look at, engaging with them, just like the ICRC is doing presently, and try and train journalists or try and train people, in some of these areas. All right, Gayatri, over to you.
Stop here, maybe.
Hi, can you hear me? So, since Dinesh has covered most of the ground in terms of the kind of entries we received, I will go into a couple of other points. My first one is about the kind of photographic entries that we received. Limited in terms of both scope and geographic representation. So I think that's a point for you to note, Sashi, that next time you need to reach out to a wider audience, ensure, I would say, greater participation. I also have a suggestion for Shant Kumar here. if someone like Shant Kumar has been documenting the erosion, the encroachment of sea into coastal lands over a period of something as much as decade and a half, that's very important data. So this is data that needs to be brought out into public domain, whether it is in photographic form, which actually is very important because data by itself does not suggest anything. If you say 1 meter, I need to employ my imagination to see how much is 1 meter. But if you show me a photograph and say this is 1 meter of my land lost, I can immediately connect with that. So if someone like Shantakumar has that kind of data, we need to support that kind of journalism, ensure that it is brought out into public domain, because this is what will eventually build into policy making as well. Policymakers also need this kind of constant input coming in for them to react and respond. The other thing that I wanted to speak about is we have received a lot of the kind of entries that we saw were about extreme climate events. Yeah, but before I get into that, there's an irony which struck me and I want to talk about it. The award that, the entry that won the first prize this year is about a family or a group of families that moved from one disaster-struck state to another. From Odisha to Kerala, both states are equally stuck by the same kind of climate disasters. I don't know, the journalist, I would request her to continue to follow these families, Vaishnavi, right? So I would like you to continue to follow these families and see where this takes them. Kerala is hit by exactly the same kind of disaster that they tried to escape from Odisha. So please do follow up, and trust me, you will be doing a great service to. I'm speaking policy because I've been in the policy space for some time now, and this is great service that you'll be doing to people who work to create these kind of disaster management frameworks, disaster management policies. Also because these now extreme climate events have become such a normal part of our lives that in their wake, before we actually clear up the impacts of one, we land headlong into the next one. I will give you an example. For instance, I was just driving down from the hills today to come to this event, and the hills of Uttarakhand, I don't have to say the kind of disaster that they've been facing, but after the rains have stopped, we are still seeing landslides every day. Parts of the highways that are being constructed are actually blocked off because there are local unreported landslides. And this will continue because this is a lot of this is, they're planned from a road building perspective, from an infrastructure perspective. They're not planned from a climate mitigation and adaptation perspective. So those are perspectives that we as journalists should also bring into our reportage.
All right, Gayatri, we'll stop here for a minute because I think Mary wants to leave a little early. Yeah, I will come back. Now, Urvashi, your inputs about the awards. Then I'll come on to Mary.
So 4 years ago, I'm an alumnus of this award. I think I won. This came in, I think,
2017.
No, this was 2019.
I see.
I remember because I was carrying my daughter then. So yeah, so I remember that very clearly. But when I was asked, by Surinder, I was overwhelmed. But I thought, okay, this is a task of great responsibility that is that I must give it all my diligence and also learn from the most senior panel members with me. And yeah, there was I'll speak to the articles mostly because I come from a print background, and that's how I connect. And there were some 66 or 70 entries, and we received couriers, hard copies, and we were looking at them online, and every story was a tale of devastation, of disaster. And what struck me was the various ways in which journalists interpreted disaster. That, to my mind, was very striking. Yes, we did have a lot of climate-related stories. In fact, those were the stories, those were stories which had, yeah, they were there. But in addition to that, many of the stories actually spoke about everyday disasters that happened in the lives of communities, of fringe communities, coal mining communities, brick kilns, fishing communities, and so well told, so well edited, and you could tell the journalists had brought in all their rigor and their heart, and they were giving it their all, so it really became a really tough task for us to select. And the other point is that with regard to the themes, we have to also understand disaster as it is happening now. We see it in the occurrence of riots, in the occurrence of communal riots. We see it in the outbreak of ethnic conflict. So those were also brought out in the entries. There weren't as many on these issues, but they were there. And also perseverance, the indomitable will of the human to survive, and it's not a choice, it's just something that you have to do. And that's what the stories really brought, the grit and the determination of people to survive despite all odds, because you have no choice. It's not that you have a plethora of choices. So that, I thought, was what really stood out for me. And in terms of impact, again, impact is very hard to define, but stories which spoke about mental health, stories which spoke about the scale and range of climate-induced migration from one part of the country to the other. I mean, I was completely, sort of, I don't know, I don't have the word for it right now, but overwhelmed when I read that piece. And those kind of pieces, and interesting work that also came out from the subcontinent, from Sri Lanka. Wish we had more of that. And finally, there were these pieces. I think what people were also pointing out to is long entrenched practices of oppression and discrimination against women and minorities, which continues to date. So there were some very vivid stories around those themes. And the final point that I want to make is that what the stories were really pointing out to is the everyday disasters in the lives of wide swaths of India. And that portrait is a very different portrait from the portrait that we see of a booming India, a rising India, and a prosperous India. It's all happening, yes, but the backstory is what really came out in these entries, according to me.
Yeah, all right, Urvashi, I think you described it very well. Yeah, I think a lot of them must have been touching stories. Let's move on now. Mary, I know you leave a little early. I have two questions for you as the ICRC representative here. One is about the humanitarian implications of natural and man-made disasters. What is ICRC's role generally, and why is communications the key? And the second question is about wars. For example, you have the Israel-Hamas conflict or the Ukraine-Russian war. What are some of the things that ICRC has learned, because you're there right in the middle of it all? And why do journalists who cover these events need to know about international humanitarian law?
Thank you very much, Sashi. I still have a bit of time because I need to go pick my kids at some point, so I was just a bit worried but I do have some time, and I'm really happy to be with you all. Good evening, of course, to our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and congratulations to the award winners. What a selection. It's been very impressive to see the work and hearing the testimonies. When it comes to your first question, Sashi, the humanitarian consequences, what our teams can see every day today in places like Sudan or in Afghanistan, in Ukraine, you mentioned Israel and Gaza or the West Bank. What we are seeing is people that are lacking, basic essential services such as food and water. If you think about Ukraine, but also in Gaza today and in Israel, it's getting very cold. So heating becomes a question of life and death in certain areas, as you know, but also medical care. There is also too many places where civilians lack the basic physical protection. They are tortured, they are illegally arrested, they are bombed. So that is definitely a very important impact of conflict that we can see. Another very tragic and often hidden consequence of conflict on people is the separation of families. People have to flee in all directions when the violence hits a place, or people are detained, taken to another country, taken to another territory, and sometimes they have no access to news from their family members. Sometimes you have mothers who are waiting for the return of their sons, of their husband, for years and for years. This is a very important part of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent movement altogether that we try to carry. It's really to bring news to family members that are separated. It's also very important to realize that in our digital age, we are seeing a lot of new trends and a lot of new threats that are sometimes turning into harm for civilians caught in armed conflict. That can be linked to disinformation, and my colleague from MSF will for sure enlighten us, give us a lot more on that. But that is also coming from cyber attacks that can disrupt civilian infrastructure that are in times of peace, places like hospitals or communication networks that are already so vital in times of peace. You can imagine in times of war, what can this bring? So those are some of the implications that our organization, together with our local partners, are seeing. Talking about the way we work or what we do, it's a very wide range of activity. Today, let's talk about today. There is something extremely important happening in the Middle East. Our teams have been working to prepare the release of hostages and Palestinian detainees. This is still very much in the makeup and years are unfolding, but this is definitely the type of work that our colleagues are doing. Tomorrow in Ukraine, we'll have teams going to places near the front line to bring heaters and food to schools that are caught in the crossfire. So those are the type of activities that our organization is carrying. It's something that it's quite important, even if the people here know well our organization, the International Red Cross. We are in between parties to the conflict. This is something that is sometimes difficult to be understood, and this is where communication is really key. We are not with a party or with another one, or we are not with and against another one. We are in the middle. And today, in a very polarized world, that it's very complicated to explain. So this is where communication is extremely key. This is where communication is really enabling our operations. It's making us understood by the authorities and the people we are trying to serve. It's also helping us, yes, to explain why sometimes we are silent. We don't talk all the time about what we do or what we see, because we believe that certain issues are dealt better behind closed door than in the public domain. And at the age of social media and information all over the place, that might be a little bit complicated also to be understood or accepted. Also, when it comes to the services that the Red Cross or the Red Crescent can bring to people, it's very important that communication help us to explain also the limitations of our work. We don't have superpower. We are not policemen. We are not magicians, and there's a lot of things that we cannot do. So that's also very important role of communication. It's also helping us to showcase the importance of respecting international humanitarian law by showing all the good that applying this type of rules in war can actually make to a situation, to a society when peace comes. When the rules of war have been respected, that might have a huge impact on the time when peace will come. And this is where obviously the work of journalists and media is key. Apart from covering stories in places that are really inaccessible and sometimes very dangerous, we have a very strong partnership with journalists wherever we work. They are our dear partners, and this is really together that we can try to bring important information to the people that we're trying to serve.
All right, Mary, thanks. We won't hold you any longer. I think you're a little stressed because you have to leave. We actually have, several books, thanks to Mr. Oberoi and the ICRC, which talks about, humanitarian law. But there are, few journalists who come and you refer them. But we wish that more journalists came and read these books because they are, a fount of information. So thank you very much for joining our program from Geneva. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Mr. Oberoi, you're next. Rohan has already given me the signal to wind up, but I think it's a little too early. Now we talk about language, accuracy of information, balanced reporting, etc. One of the things I think, you can take it first and then probably Dinesh can supplement it. Now we have different media platforms, traditional news outlets, the print media, then you have social media, you have people making documentaries. How do all these contribute to shaping the narratives around human disasters? That's one of the questions I have. And as a sort of corollary to that, what are some of the ethical considerations in reporting on sensitive and traumatic events during, a disaster? For example, let's look at the disaster in Uttarakhand, where the workers are still, waiting to be pulled out. The government has issued an advisory to private television channels, only to television channels, asking them to refrain from sensationalizing the, the coverage of rescue operations. The advisory was issued by the Ministry of Information Broadcasting, has told the channels to be sensitive, especially while putting out headlines and videos of rescue operations, considering the psychological status of family members of the workers. Also, the presence of cameramen, reporters, etc., might hamper operations. So overall, what's your take on this? Mr. Oberoi first.
Yeah, thank you, Shashi. Well, there are so many questions, loaded questions in one of your questions that I can deliver a lecture in all these issues. But on one side, these are very important issues for a journalist who is on the field, on the ground zero. But we usually forget about the people who suffer, basically. Many a times, most of the journalists are not reporting about, I would say, the grass which is being trampled when the two elephants are fighting against each other. We talk more about the two elephants rather than the grass which is on the ground. Having said that, and specifically when you ask me about the Uttarakhand, it's again a double sword sort of a thing. My personal experience having two hats under this turban, like being a journalist and also as a humanitarian worker, you have to look into both the sides. I equally blame here the Uttarakhand government also. Why? Because they have not been giving a press releases or press briefings. It's equally an emergency. If there is a war, for example, what's happening in with Hamas as well as Israel right now, there are two briefings being given morning and evening by the Israeli Defense Force as well as by Hamas, who are giving their press releases each and every time, or their health ministry who is giving it. When you compare it to the Uttarakhand, look into the televisions. They are like black holes, 24 hours channels. They need some sort of a substance. I'll come back to the journalists also where they have been sensationalizing, but I'm just starting from the other side. They are supposed to give at least one briefing in a day. In fact, today was the first briefing given by the Press Information Bureau, and that too by a former Lieutenant General, General Hasnan, whom they have brought there. And it was really good, and I'm sure he has given a lot of material for the media persons to write about it. Once you cannot get anything and you are on the spot waiting for 10 or 11 days, media tries to create some sort of a story. Now here you need your self-censorship. The media persons should also look into the humanitarian effects which are important. For example, I was covering Kargil. We all have been reporting about what were the number of casualties or airstrikes which were taking place. But we had forgotten about Dras, the coldest place of the world, second coldest place of the world, where very sparkly population was there. And what exactly happens to them because their roads into their houses remain open only for 2 months. Were they able to stock everything or not? Not even a single journalist has reported about that thing. Now, how many journalists have reported about the miners who are trapped in it, about their families? That is also equally important, and that is where the humanitarian aspects are to be looked in. What I would say that many of us have become quite lazy, looking the news to travel. There is so much of information which travels into your rooms. You don't go to the spot. And I usually call for a media person, a journalist. The way there is an intravenous fluid for your survival when you are sick, same way there is an intravenous fluid for the media persons. And IV fluid means I for investigation and V for verification. The more number of times you go to a spot, what is called as an onion effect in the journalism, the more you remove the layers, the more you are going to get the sweetest part of the onion, the main stories out right there. So we do not go to the spot, work around it. It's important for us to go there. I think I should stop here also, otherwise I'll continue speaking because the flavors of the food is also coming here.
No, that's
most of the audience here is just waiting for
and I'm
that.
sure that I'm sure the smell must be wafting through. But are the journalists there listening to what you have said now?
There are many, and I'm sure
All
because
right.
I support them because believe me, another thing, you see, if you look, if we are reporting about the safety of the people, as a journalist now I'm talking about with my that cap, the journalists also need a safety. Most of the journalists here, at least in India, in small newspapers, except few of this, are not even insured when they go to the stories, especially for the freelancers. And their safety, or they have not been given some sort of a training. Finally, every journalist cannot be trained or be specific to each and every topic. For example, Mary was talking about international humanitarian law, and you were also talking about it. Believe me, let me confess, I have covered Kargil and I have broken the story also. I was in fact injured also because I had a big fallout right there. I saw my own photographer getting killed in violence sort of a thing. But I did not knew while covering what is laws of war. It was only when I joined ICRC that I was able to look into and work around on it. So it's important to impart. Another factor which I tell you, people like me, or maybe 45 plus, we all have become illiterates again because we don't have the technical knowledge of the artificial intelligence and other. We all need, all officers need knowledge to be gained. And for that, it's a big project which people need to do. To give education, the way we have been giving adult education to illiterate, in a similar fashion, most of us who have not who are not technology friendly people. And that's why we fall because of these frauds, or what we call as a unverified news which is happening. It's simple tool to verify your news. You can easily look into the spot from where the news has arrived, but nobody has taught the media persons to do that. It's important for verification. I'm sure my disinformation colleague, the one who is going to speak about the disinformation, because truth has always been the first casualty. These are all words which we are now changing. It's a 5,000-year-old civilization. For the 5,000 years, we have been fighting war against each other. humans have the tendency of fighting against each other, and there were rules of tribals and others, but truth was always the first casualty. And you know it in all situations how propaganda is being used and how media persons sometimes get used. They just whisper something into your ear, and next day you write it, and the same diplomat then writes this particular story.
So there's no checking and verifying. Checking and verifying is taken a backseat. Okay, so let's go to a digital savvy person. All right, Divya, two questions for you. Divya, of course, fake news and misinformation, as we all know, have crept into news stories, and even trained journalists are sometimes finding it difficult to judge, which is true and which isn't. Also, there is the growing concern of misinformation and disinformation, hate speech also, in various avenues of communication, including social media. How do you think journalists can ensure accurate and unbiased reporting when covering humanitarian disasters, when the situation becomes even, far greater, far more difficult? When you consider the challenges of limited access to specific areas, let's say. All right, so that's one. The other one is, now I'm sure you know that the government has decided to, take urgent steps to deal with the menace of deep fake technology, which can create fake and misleading videos and images, etc., using artificial intelligence. In fact, I think a couple of days ago, the Union Minister for Electronics and IT and Communications convened a meeting with various people, including social media platforms and government officials, and said that the strategy will focus on 4 aspects: detection, prevention, reporting mechanism, and awareness. Do you think this will help in the long run? I hope you've got my 2 questions. Divya.
Okay, thank you so much, Sashi. And first of all, I'm really honored to be here. I literally feel like a kid who knows nothing, like while I'm sitting next to such no. No, people think actually it's something which sort of cropped up during the pandemic, and it's something a new phenomenon. To be really honest, it's not new. It's been happening since the time when Hitler was in his existence, in different ways and forms. It's just that we have given it a name. You call it rumors, you call it narrative building, propaganda, whatever. And to be really honest, every morning I start my day by looking at various trends and looking at news reports where journalists have done fabulous job of fact-checking, coming up with facts and debunking all sort of incorrect, I call it information disorder, because you just can't name every single thing, dis, hate speech, propaganda, etc. But also at the same time where news mediums sort of validated that fake news, validated that piece of propaganda, which could cause a lot of harm to people who are targeted. So I think journalists do play a major role when it comes to curbing this issue, because even I myself, when you look at social media, it's unfiltered, it's not moderated properly. A lot of chaos happens there because you sort of come across a lot of correct information, incorrect information, stuff that makes sense, stuff that doesn't make sense. And when you are in an environment where you yourself feel stressed, nervous, you feel vulnerable, that's when it starts to hit you hard. In that situation, you decide that, okay, probably there are these credible news organizations, journalists who are reporting. But when this sort of fake news starts to creep into those media outlets, that's when the lines start to get blurred. And to be really honest, starting from the Ukraine-Russia war, then I saw Sudan, then instances in Manipur, now we have the Israel-Gaza situation, and the way this has been accepted, and the way fake news has started to creep into, narratives have started to creep into even reporting, it's not a good trend. And this is the time when journalists really need to sort of pull their socks up and actually go out and do verification, first of all, provide credible information to people. Because now we have reached a time where people are using narratives to actually globally take sides. And that's a dangerous trend right now. And also at the same time, I feel that we are seeing more and more fact checkers, we are seeing more and more groups which are coming up who are debunking, actively providing techniques, everything. But nobody is reporting on what's the impact of misinformation, disinformation on the people who are targeted, on those who are vulnerable, especially the humanitarian organizations or people who are facing the brunt of a disaster. So until we ourselves, we know there's a problem, but how does it impact me? That's what is lacking right now. And with misdisinformation, everybody, whatever efforts we are putting in, nothing is enough. Because all those who are actually pushing those narratives, all those people who are using these tools, they are way ahead of us. So to say journalists definitely, I work in a humanitarian organization, many of us are here. We are trying to push ourselves, prepare our teams to kind of mitigate the damage as much as possible, prepare ourselves better. But in this, we require a lot of support from journalists. And fun fact, I've met a lot of fact checkers and these groups who work on misinformation, disinformation. More than half of these experts whom we think are techies, they're actually journalists. Like somewhere they were journalists, they got interested into the field of misinformation, disinformation verification, and that's when they decided, okay, now they'll become like full-time experts. Yes, full-time techies to say, and they know a lot. Coming to AI, this is, I always say this is a very juicy question. Like everybody is interested to talk about AI, everybody is interested to know more about it. We are putting a lot of effort is being put in improving AI, but how do we curb the harm which is being caused? I am not sure if we are still at pace with that. It will, and the way, the pace at which it's growing, the way it's creeping up in our lives, and especially in the space of misdisinfo, it's causing us a lot of pain and a lot of issues, because with the help of AI, these orchestrated campaigns, they are now becoming more and more sophisticated. They are getting improved. Photographs are something, like if you have a photograph in front of you, that's like the final proof. But right now, people can meddle with that too. Like there are so many instances, videos, everything is being messed up with.
Yeah.
But,
okay, Divya. Yeah. Okay, I got what you're saying. Since this is an important point about deep fake technology, the government trying to curb it, etc. I'll just throw it open to everyone. Urvashi now. I mean, generally speaking, now you're on the field, right? I mean, you just came from the Sundarbans, for example. Let's not just talk about Israel and Hamas and what's happening elsewhere in the world. But at a local level, do you find this sort of thing that comes in the way of you reporting? You being able to report properly, deep fakes or misinformation at a local level.
That's an interesting question. So this is not the sense of disinformation, but I think it's more about the verification that journalists need to conduct on the ground. And since you mentioned the Sundarbans, I was there over the last 2 or 3 days, and we were I was on an assignment for a media outlet, and we were interviewing some women, some fisher women who are impacted by climate change and who generally have very difficult lives because of the saline water and saline air of Sundarbans. So we were trying to understand how climate change might be impacting them, and they were speaking about a range of problems like skin diseases. They were speaking about irregular menstruation cycles and allergies. And then the woman, she also said, it's also causing cancer. And I just sort of, I was just transcribing the audio, and I just hit pause there because, and I just, made a sort of a note to my colleague on the story that, let's not include this if we don't have enough data on this, because we hear interesting things on the field, but to actually verify and fact check, it's our responsibility to ensure that we are not getting carried away in our maybe in our attempt to prove a thesis or a point that we have. So, but in terms of everyone has a smartphone. All the young kids, even if people are illiterate, everyone has phones and they have WhatsApp, and so yes, it's misinformation. How it actually affects rural areas would be another opening in another set of issues that we need to discuss in detail. Yeah.
All right, Dinesh or Mr. Oberoi, you want to add to this?
Can I just add something
Yeah,
to
sure,
this whole thing
sure.
on disinformation? COP28 starts next week, and we all
Sorry?
know what I said. COP28 starts next week.
Ah, yes, yes.
And we all know what's on the agenda: loss and damage funds, climate finance. If you look at corporate climate action, news around corporate climate action, the last 2 months, there's been a very clear narrative building around how corporate climate action is profit negative, how it has not really yielded any results. All of this will impact the discussions next week, because eventually it is corporate action that is going to make a difference to how the emissions are brought down, how the finance will flow into various loss and damage funds, other forms of climate finance. So very clearly there is a narrative building going around here which nobody is really talking about.
All right. Anyone else would like to add anything?
Just one point. I think you raised a very large, it's a bigger question about the trustworthiness of the media. I mean, there was a time when people used to believe whatever was broadcast from radio, then we started believing what came on the television. Newspapers have always been around. But today, the trustworthiness of all these traditional media has gone down, and there have been a number of studies, the surveys have shown that it's a trust factor. People have started believing what comes in this. So that's where this whole, I mean, you can have an army of fact checkers, you can have an army of journalists, but you can't beat this. Because if there's an influencer who has got 1 million followers and he believes in pseudoscience, what are you going to do with that? So that is a very big crisis. I think the mainstream media, trained journalists, in fact, humanitarian disaster relief work also is facing. That's, I think that's a, we are living in a really post-truth world, and that's a big crisis. I think if, as they say in the context of disasters, that what you need when a disaster hits is food, shelter, blankets, and truthful information. I think this whole crisis about the truthful information and which media to believe. I mean, as a consumer also, people are totally confused. I mean, there are 500 million people who have access only to this form of consumption. The information is flowing only out of this device. So I think that's a bigger crisis. I mean, we can't address it. Deepfake is just at the top of it. I mean, it's a deeper crisis which I think everybody is facing. Thank you.
Urvashi, you're nodding your head. Are you agreeing or in disagreement?
See, the thing is that, again, coming back to the Sundarbans, I keep referring back to it, but we were reporting from this really remote village, and guest houses have only now started coming up, and that place had like high-speed Wi-Fi, like the hotel, whatever, the guest house person managed to do that. And then we were on a health story, and what struck me was that hospitals didn't have, like the rural hospitals, they don't have specialists, no gynecologists. So it's like, okay, so we have high-speed Wi-Fi, but we don't have, like heart specialists or gynecologists. So it's like technology is sort of is being, projected as the end all and be all of all of the
technology
crisis.
is there, but the basic infrastructure is lacking. That's what you
Yeah.
mean. Okay. Yeah, got it. Mr. Oberoi, you want to add anything quickly? Because Rohan is after me to close this.
Yeah, not only Rohan, in fact, as I said earlier, that all the people who are sitting here
Yeah,
are just
okay,
waiting
I know.
for the
Okay.
food.
So
No, but
apologies
I
again.
just
So
want
you can
to
round
give
it
my
up.
concluding remarks in the sense, the tragedy is that news has become quite short. Even our editors don't ask us for a longer pieces. They ask us to reduce it to 500 words, 600 words, which is there. Look, the biggest news agency today is the Twitter, and even Twitter has shrinked into X. So look into the way things are getting shorter and shorter. But finally, it's the responsibility of the person who is reporting, who is from the ground, who is reporting, because there is a chain of command and everything, but finally things come to the journalist who is reporting, or reporter who is there on the field, or a photographer who is there. One thing which we all need to remember as a journalist, with my own experience, that what you are going to produce, as Gayatri was mentioning about the Kerala story, that she wants to bring it into the policy. Same way our chief guest who was mentioning about some of the reports which they also want to do a sort of a research. What we produce as a journalist is seen as a truth and is being accepted. And many of the actions by the society, by the global actors, including UN, ICRC or others, are built up after the newspaper reports the information which reaches to them. So if you really want to bring in those particular effects, a journalist himself has to self-censor, look into the report, verify, and then write. Many a times you kill your own stories because of the deadlines and other things. But finally, you will be seen as a good reporter, and those journalists who do good research are the ones who are winning Pulitzer Awards. They may not be on the front pages, they may be in the op-ed pages, but finally the ones who have been doing complete research. That's all, that's the message I would.
Okay, Mr. Oberoi, we'll end it there. Mary, thanks for staying with us. I think we'll close it here. I think if today's awards and the journalists and the others who won them, and also all those who contributed to these awards over the years, not just this year, if they are any indication and their work is any indication, and I mean, we're all sure that journalism is still in very good hands. And one shining example is right before us, Urvashi, who won an award a few years ago, is now on her own and documentary. Shant Kumar there is again doing some documentary in a long-term project, etc. So thank you all very much for joining. Apologies again for not being there, and of course for just taking it a little too long. I know dinner is waiting, so all of you enjoy the evening, and here's my best wishes to all the award winners and to all of you. Thank you so much. Over to Rohan.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shashi. I think it takes a real insightful and enriching conversation to keep one from food and drinks at this time of the hour. But thank you so much. We are truly grateful to all of you, not just as part of the jury, but for bringing in such a thoughtful conversation, which I'm sure I have learned from, but everybody in this audience has also gained a lot from. Without wasting much time, I'll quickly invite our HORD, Kedir Avolomar, and our Deputy HORD, Manish Das, to offer a small token of appreciation from our side. As the last step, I now invite Sandeep Bali, Head of Prevention at the Regional Delegation of the ICRC, to give the vote of thanks for everything.
A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It has been an absolute pleasure and privilege to host you all to this year's ICRC PII Award and be part of this fascinating ceremony for the proud and deserving awardees, as well as to hear the views of the expert panel on stories of resilience in humanitarian disasters. On behalf of Kedir Amar, ICRC Head of Regional Delegation, I would like to extend a heartfelt gratitude and thanks to the special guest, Shri Rajendra Ratnu, Executive Director NIDM, for being with us this evening and sharing his thoughts and felicitating the winners. A special thanks to Shri N.K. Singh, Deputy Director, IRCS, for his remarks and felicitation of the winners tonight. A special and big thanks to the chair and speakers of distinguished panel, Shashi Nair, Dinesh Sharma, Surendra Oberoi, Gayatri Ramanathan, Urvashi Sarkar, and Divya Pushkarna and Amari Dahakua. Your valuable insights and sharing of experience have enriched us on all on various challenges and risk involved in bringing out the stories humanitarian disasters. Heartiest congrats to the deserving winners of the awards and all the journalists who participated in this competition for bringing stories of humanitarian interest to the forefront. A big thanks again to the jury, Dinesh Sharma, Gayatri Ramanathan and Rushvi Sarkar, who have diligently and independently selected the stories and photos for this year's award. A heartfelt gratitude and a big thanks to our partners, Press Institute of India, Shashi Nair and his team, and our senior colleague, Surendra Oberoi, for their guidance and active involvement in conceptualizing and shaping the event from starts to its culmination tonight. Many thanks to our comm team, Rohan and Ashish, and all ICRC colleagues involved who have been working tirelessly since months, shoulder to shoulder with PI, to bring about this prestigious event. Also, very big thanks to our ex-colleagues who have joined us tonight, Anuradha, Rajiv, Ashubhat, and Sunod. I also thank the journalism community and repeating what Kadir mentioned, who are at ground zero and their unwavering commitment to putting the spotlight on humanity's challenges. I sincerely thank all distinguished guests present here for making the time to be with us today to felicitate the winners of this prestigious awards and take this opportunity to invite you all to join us for the cocktail and dinner reception. Thank you all and have a nice evening. Again, I'm mentioning you are please invited for the cocktails and dinner, and I think we would like to have a group photograph session before that.